Will our club stay online, return to meet solely in person, or a mix of both, an hybrid format? What will this look like, you ask? Bonne question, n'est-ce pas? This evening, we will be holding a special panel discussion to help find answers to that very question. This panel will be led by distinguished Toastmaster Sylvain Offray. Sylvain est un membre de Toastmasters depuis 25 ans. Il a servi notre district dans de nombreux rôles. Regardant à l'horizon, Sylvain réfléchissait avec ses collègues Toastmasters à quoi ressemblerait l'avenir de nos clubs lorsque nous pourrons nous revoir enfin en personne. C'est dans cet esprit qu'il a demandé à 3 de ses amis bien spéciaux de se joindre à lui et d'explorer la question. Hybrid meeting, what should a club consider? Réunion hybride, qu'est-ce qu'un club devrait considérer? Help me welcome our panel leader, Sylvain Offray, and his team. Sylvain.
Merci beaucoup, Linda. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion. Glad you could join us this evening. And what just happened? My notes just went away. With vaccines being distributed around the world, we peer over the horizon. We see a glimmer of hope in the horizon. Et oui, depuis la pandémie, la majorité de nos clubs se réunissent en ligne. Cela nous a offert à tous une opportunité différentes, telles que trouver des nouveaux membres à l'extérieur de nos zones de géographiques typiques. But on that bright day, when the pandemic ends, what will our clubs do? Stay online? Nous réunir uniquement en personne? Ou peut-être un mélange des deux, un format hybride? On that note, let me define, for the sake of this presentation, what is the meaning of a hybrid meeting? Some have suggested that a club would meet 1 week online and 1 week in person. While yes, that would indeed be a hybrid club, for the sake of this panel, the term hybrid will mean that a portion of the members will meet online and another portion of the club members will be in person, and both have the same meeting experience. Nous avons 3 excellents panélistes avec nous qui partageront leurs idées avec nous ce soir. Et nous ne prétendons pas avoir toutes les réponses. What we will share with you, however, are points that we collectively believe are important ones that the club should consider if and when they try the hybrid format. We will have 3 main focus during the panel: back to basics, or the user experience, by past international director Susan Delati; technical considerations by past regional advisor Frank Schilder; and change management, things to consider, or what I like to call adapt and overcome, by Angèle Beaulieu. Cet atelier sera bilingue. The aim of the workshop, again, will not be to tell you what you and how you must do things when or if you decide to go hybrid, but rather offer you important points, or points that we believe are important to consider when you and your club membership will consider and make a decision to make hybrid meetings as successful as they can be. Oui, Frank va partager des points sur la technologie, mais son segment ne sera pas à propos de la technologie elle-même, mais plutôt comment pouvons-nous utiliser la technologie pour nous aider à avoir des rencontres inclusives. Il y aura une session de questions-réponses à la conclusion de l'atelier. Je vous encourage, si vous avez des questions pendant le panel, please write your questions in the chat. Linda and Julie will both be moderating the chat. That will help me bring the Q&A at the end. And on that, you've heard me speak enough for now. Let's get to the meat of the matter and get the ball rolling with my first panelist, my best friend, Susan Delati, on Back to Basics, the user experience. À toi, Sue.
Thank you, Sylvain. That thought-provoking question, what will the future look like to our clubs when we can meet in person again, got us all thinking. Some of you have been counting the days till we put that pandemic behind us and finally meet together in person. Hearing the applause, that familiar laugh, really seeing people's reactions to what we have to say. Presque comme un peu de vie avant la pandémie, n'est-ce pas? Ce que nous nous sommes habitués à voir et à attendre de notre réunion typique de club. For others, you admit it, at the beginning, it was tough being online. No more one-on-one discussions, no hanging around, no post-toasties to really talk about. You've gotten used to finishing up whatever you were working on and jumping into a meeting 5 or 10 minutes ahead of schedule and still be early. You want to see people, but you're not looking forward to that physical trek in bad weather or heavy traffic. You simply value your time now more than wasting it on commuting. Still, others would love to have the choice, but they live in a community in a different city or a different country than the rest of our members. As Sylvain shared, having them as members has been a wonderful opportunity, and they feel a part of our club. With the talk of everyone mentioning about getting back to meeting in person, they may question whether they are truly considered a real member. And does that mean that their days as a member of your club are limited? What brings us into our clubs is what we can learn. What keeps us in our clubs are the relationships. For most of our clubs, deciding how hybrid meetings are to work for your clubs and the members should aim to maintain and support relationships for all. Sylvain nous a donné la définition des réunions hybrides. D'une partie de nos participants sont en ligne et les autres sont en personne. How do we make certain that, true to our club mission, every individual member has the opportunity to develop their oral and leadership skills in a mutually supportive and positive learning environment, when the environment is not the same for all of us? How do we ensure all members and guests feel included and equally part of this new hybrid club meeting experience? And how do we build those vital relationships that make our club so special? And how do we maintain those relationships so members will renew and stay and feel connected? As Sylvain said, the basics of Toastmasters. Getting back to those basics means reminding ourselves why we joined Toastmasters and why we continue to stay. Our meetings are but one way to ensure we stay connected with each other and build those sustaining relationships. Here are a few points to consider when looking to level the playing field to ensure all of our members and guests feel equally included in hybrid meetings. First, consider how you advertise the location of your hybrid meeting. The main location of our meeting should no longer be thought of as our in-person physical building with an online option to join in. When deciding to hold hybrid meetings, the meeting location is both the physical building and the online platform. Aucun endroit ne doit être considéré comme plus important ou considéré comme notre permanent endroit de réunion. C'est les deux. Whether you are in person or online, the club meeting experience needs to be the same for all. Guests can come into our meetings through either venue. An online guest should be no more, no less special to us than an in-person guest. How we welcome guests coming in online or in person needs to be thought of and consciously acted upon as they enter our meeting. Often, when holding hybrid meetings, those online are often forgotten or neglected more than those in person. We need to be conscious of our tendencies and focus on both. Angèle partagera quelques suggestions plus tard sur la façon dont les changements à notre ordre du jour peuvent aider tous les membres et invités à se sentir inclus. Second, as Toastmasters, we know the value of connecting to our audience through eye contact. When taking a speaking role, establishing eye contact in hybrid meetings will require us to consider what eye contact means for a hybrid audience. If we ourselves are online, looking into the camera will continue to be so important to allow us to connect with everyone at the same time. What if we're in person? We will need to consciously look both at our in-person members as well as the camera connecting us to our online members. Un bon contact visuel permet à quiconque dans notre auditoire de ressentir une connexion avec l'auditeur. Third, when signing up for agenda roles, all roles should be equally open to all members, whether they are in person or online. Meeting chairs shouldn't be limited to only those attending in person, and speeches should be encouraged to be given online and in person. Switching it up from week to week will ensure members know they are an integral part of every meeting and know they can take on any meeting role they'd like, regardless of whether they enter or participate in the meeting from. Fourth, engaging and re-engaging all members when speaking will be more important than ever. A Toastmasters Club meeting experience means offering an interactive learning environment. How will you ensure your meetings are interactive for both online and in-person attendance? If you ask for audience participation by a show of hands, or you include a question and answer session, ensure you take questions from those you see in the venue you are in, as well as from those of the other venue. Asking for participants' comments will be different than what we're used to now while we're online. Consider options like online surveys or apps that will allow everyone to participate in the same way and at the same time, regardless of their physical location. La clé est de faire en sorte que tous les participants se sentent également inclus. The bottom line, for everyone to feel equally included, every individual member has to believe they have an equal opportunity to develop their oral and leadership skills from wherever they are. Everyone attending in person needs to see and hear everyone attending online. Everyone attending online needs to see and hear everyone attending in person. How will we make that happen? Frank will now share options to consider with technology and meeting setup that will assist you to make this happen. Over to you, Frank.
Thank you so much, Sue. Give me a sec to get this running. I'm going to share with you a technical perspective of hybrid meetings, but not get into a lot of depth about this piece of equipment, that piece of equipment. There is so much out there that it would be a 1-hour presentation at least if we tried to do that. Hybrid meetings present challenges, as Sue just outlined. The graphic on the screen right now kind of gives a sense of some of the equipment that might be used if you're in a big setting so that everybody can see and that you have some sense of what's going on. Well, that's all well and good, but you're not going to find this in your closet at home. If you were to buy everything that's on this screen here right now, you would discover that this cost you somewhere right off the bat of around $2,200. A lot of clubs don't have that, and a lot of members are immediately thinking, oh my goodness, how much is my membership going to cost me? I am going to try and take an approach that allows you to look at this from the perspective of starting with the minimal equipment you can and build when you have the time and budget to do so. I'm going to, first of all, some key things to think about. You absolutely must have access to internet. Now, this is important in that a lot of people think that's an automatic given. If you are in a corporate club that is a secure environment where you do not have the luxury of being able to allow external people to come in, then that is something you have to consider. If you're a corporate club that has access to a video conferencing room, bless you. They have some very nice equipment that really will go a long way to helping you. Understanding, of course, that senior management could walk in anytime and say, my toy, I'm taking it. Hardwired connection is desirable if at all possible. And that means that you actually have an internet wire going into your connection, your laptop, whatever the case may be. Especially if you look at a scenario where it has more than one camera. Video is exceptionally broad, as they call it, in the amount of data that it sends over the wire. A wireless connection gives you about half of the capacity that a hardwired connection will. So that's a factor to think about if you can. You might also want to consider an internet stick if you have no other options, or the wireless connection in the facility you have is such a low quality that it's causing problems. Surprisingly, some people might be unaware that the most important factor you need to consider in your room is your audio, more so than your video. Your members can put up with a little bit of a fuzzy screen. You might not be able to see that freckle on someone's cheek, but if the audio is not clear, it's going to interfere and it's going to give people a sense, I'm not happy here. They need to be able to hear. The quality of your audio pickup drops as you get further away from the microphone. Sad to say, most laptops, or even to some degree the electronic equipment we have, the microphones are not the best. They are great if you are somewhere nearby, the same as the speaker. You are somewhere nearby. But if you're in a larger room like that picture, the people further away are not going to be able to hear the audio. They're not going to be picked up. And the people online are going to have trouble hearing that person. And as Sue pointed out, it is important to think about a meeting from both those elements equally, shall we say. There are tools available. There are all kinds of ideas. As I said, I'll throw some things up there just for you to think about. But the other factor that is important is the room echo. Online, everybody sits in front of their computer, and even then, you have heard some people where it sounds like they're in a tub, simply because of the microphone they have. Other people have great quality. People use headsets. Whatever the case, room echo will really distort sound. So the better the microphone you can manage, the better things will be. Your video, remember, it is super important to see people's faces. And I'm going to spend a few minutes shortly looking at some different floor plan ideas. But it is important that faces are visible. It is important that whoever is speaking is on camera. And it is important that the people online can see the people in the room, and the people in the room can see the people online. So how on earth do you manage that? I'll talk about that in a second. Other little things you may want to consider: if you have a second camera, you may want to have a tripod, some kind of a phone holder if that camera is an iPhone. And you're going to want like a screen or a large-ish TV, like you saw in the opening graphic. So how can we set up a room? You may or may not have the luxury, but the one thing that applies no matter how you set up a room is you must have internet, one way or another. Wireless, that's fine. At least you don't have to be wired, worry about wires on the floor and things like that. The simplest kind of setup that you could start with is a laptop. Laptops generally have, and I say laptop, it could be an iPad, I'm not going to distinguish there. They generally have a camera on board. They usually have a microphone on board. As I said, they're not going to be great. They'll often have speakers. Not great, but depending on how big your room is, you should be able to make it work. If you only have the one camera, while someone is speaking, you're going to have to aim that camera at the speaker. And once they have finished speaking, you're going to want to turn it around back so that the people in the room become part of the element that the online folks look at. You're going to have to adapt, but it keeps your costs down. So again, and I will say this later as well, the KISS principle, keep it simple. You know what the S stands for. As in time you have an opportunity to do better, you may want to consider a second camera and or a microphone. An additional or an external microphone will make a big difference in how well the sound picks up. If you've ever been in a video conference room, you know they have them on the table. The reason is because they can pick up the sound much better. The next thing you want to consider is an external speaker. People all have seen these USB speakers. You get them at Costco. You can get them any number of places. They're amazing. They can be wireless, but they really improve the quality of the sound that is going to be heard in the room. You may want to consider some method of a projection that instead of having to try and look at that little laptop screen with all the people online, you can have a bigger screen. Be aware that those people need to be to the side and not behind the speaker. You cannot have that screen on the wall behind the speaker. Because now, if the camera is on the speaker, it's also going to be showing the people that are online. And you'll be surprised how self-conscious people suddenly start to become. A single table like this is one setup. You might want to consider a wireless microphone that allows the speaker to be really clear when they're speaking, and the other microphone works for the room. Again, it comes down to dollars. A more popular type of setup is the horseshoe setup. It usually allows for more people. It gives you some space to put your equipment. The requirements are still going to be more or less the same. Think about where your equipment needs to be and what does it need to be looking at any particular point in time. If you have a second camera, it can really help. Here's where iPads might be something to look at. iPads usually have a front and back camera, or an iPhone, whatever the case may be. You can toggle that camera so that sometimes it's looking at the audience, and without moving it, you can then have it, when the speaker is there, have it look at the speaker. Possibility. If you have access to it, here's an avenue that you might want to consider. That saves you the cost of an additional camera. So there's ways that you can look at to try and keep your costs down. Another scenario, if you've ever been in a video conferencing room, is they use a V table. Idea behind this, it vastly improves the ability for the camera to connect visually with the people in the room. Because now they're almost more or less facing to the front instead of looking at profiles. The ideal setup is something that would be called theater or classroom, where everybody is looking towards the speaking space and therefore, of course, to the camera that is facilitating the people that are online. Any of these will work. It will depend on what avenues you have access to. Things to think about: screen sharing. Understand it is not the same for those in the room as it is for those that are online. Online, people have a single screen. It is square in front of their face. In the room, everybody is sharing that real estate, some closer, some further away. Whiteboards and flip charts do not work well for online meetings because the people online will be challenged to try and see what's going on. So avoid those. Be very cautious of the us and them situation. Often when you're sitting next to somebody, it's very easy to whisper to them and say, oh, that's not fair to the people online. You really have to be conscious, as Sue stressed in her presentation, about that. When someone is speaking online, mute the room mic. Otherwise, you will get feedback. If the speaker is using a second mic, you have to manage which room microphone is on. You cannot have them both on at the same time. So things like that need to be remembered. I would like to have you look online on YouTube for this particular individual. His name is Marcus Sapala. He has an outstanding amount of information available on hybrid meetings. I'm just providing you a very short capsule. Specifically, the video that you see, or the video, I'll get this right, that you see mentioned, the Zoom setup for hybrid. He actually shows the meeting that the setup he uses in his Toastmaster meeting room. And it's as simple as what you see here. A laptop, an iPhone, a speaker, and a lavalier mic sitting on what's called a boom stand. That's how they run their meetings. It does not have to be complicated. That link that I showed there, I just put into the chat. It does not have to be an elaborate setup, folks. And I really, really encourage here, avoid the dazzle temptation. You don't have to impress people, but people have to pay for what they want to use. Extras can enhance, but they cost. And think about every aspect of your sound and video. Think about how it feels from both perspectives, online and in the room. As much as you can manage, that feeling should be the same for both. And whatever you do, have some fun and good luck. Angel.
Thank you, Frank. Well, that was dazzling. I was dazzled, Frank. And Sue put together such a great vision for us. And inclusiveness is something that stuck with me and that I think we all need to consider going forward. Are you on board with this change yet? Because change happens one member at a time. And that's a little bit what I'm going to be talking about tonight, the impact on various roles of going to a hybrid meeting, the impact, what we might want to see on our agendas, other special inclusiveness considerations, and how we do this change management in our clubs. When I was organizational development consultant with the City of Ottawa, I did lead a few teams who had to, through some change management, and they had to go mobile. They were losing their office. So there's a lot of technology involved, but it's never just about the technology, is it? There's often a lot of behaviors, practices, procedures, policies, and every single person needs to recommit to Toastmasters. I remember Devender in the fall telling us about the yes, what a yes could be. Each one of our members has said yes when they first joined Toastmasters. And they say yes again after they've done a few speeches, they feel more comfortable, comes the time to renew. Well, now, after 1 year of being in virtual mode, some people have left. Some people might come back, we hope, with hybrid meetings, and we've gained new members. In our Club Avancé Synergie, we've gained members from Toronto, from Quebec City, from Montreal. We want to keep those members. And so very important to make sure that all those folks see themselves in the change and renew that yes. I'd like to offer one quick change management conversation or change management tool that you might want to use with the members in your club. I don't know whether you're going to be able to read this very well, but this was a little tool that we were talking about with our various teams. It's called ADKAR. A stands for awareness, D for desire, K for knowledge, A for the ability of taking on the new mode or model or hybrid meeting, and R for reinforcement. So what we're doing today is really all about awareness. And we're starting it with just this group, but we will need to take that to our clubs and start that same conversation with every club member, because they will all need to renew their yes and say, yes, this is how I want to do it going forward. Now, let me touch on some meeting rules, the impact of a hybrid meeting on meeting rules. Existing meeting rules. Well, the Toastmaster, the general evaluator, topics master, as Sue mentioned earlier, very important to make eye contact with people in the room and with people who might be online. Easy if you're online, right? You're always looking at that little green dot or that camera. If you're in person, you're switching between the little eye of the camera and you're looking at the folks also who are in the room with you. So a little change there for the Toastmaster. The topics master will want to make sure they give table topics to people both in the room and online, and so on. One role that's going to be very important to consider how we do it is the timer. As we know, Timing is paramount at Toastmasters. How are we going to position the timer so that we can see the timer whether we're online or in the room? So that's going to be a question we need to ask ourselves. What about the evaluator? If you're like me, you have not received as many written evaluations since we've been going online as we used to when we were in person. I would challenge us to think that again, because evaluations are so important to our growth and our progress at Toastmasters. So let's see what we can do. Is it, for example, we fill out an evaluation form, we take a picture, we email it to person. Maybe that's one way to do it so that it's not very onerous. I know that one thing that keeps me from sending some written evaluations sometimes is having to type it up in the PDF form after a meeting. And once a meeting is done, it's like the meeting is done. So I don't know about you, but I think we need to resurrect that notion of the evaluation. So very important there. New meeting roles. I suggest that with this technology that Frank was talking about, very important to have some tech masters and Zoom masters. What would those people do? Well, the tech master would make sure the equipment is properly set up in the room. The Zoom master would make sure that they're meeting folks, they're admitting folks who are coming online. And what if there's an unforeseen situation? I would suggest that we need two sergeant at arms, one online, one in person, so that the two can connect. Should there be a situation where, oops, we've lost our connection, we've lost Zoom, and maybe those two sergeant at arms have an alternate mode of communicating to make it, to forward the decision to everyone involved. So those are two new roles that I would suggest. Maintenant, les ordres du jour. Qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec les ordres du jour? Heureusement qu'on a Easy Speak, qu'on a FreeToast Host. Avec les ordres du jour en ligne, ça va très bien aller. On peut quand même s'inscrire, prendre des rôles. Je suggérerais que ça serait peut-être intéressant d'avoir sur nos ordres du jour en ligne, de savoir est-ce que la personne va être présente en ligne ou est-ce que la personne va venir en personne. Ça pourrait aider le huissier qui va avoir à organiser, préparer la salle à l'avance, savoir le nombre de places, parce que peut-être qu'on va être limité pour le nombre de places, on ne sait pas. Tout va dépendre des consignes à ce moment-là. Alors, ce serait important pour le Toastmaster de savoir est-ce que je cherche dans la salle, est-ce que la personne est à l'écran. Alors, pour aider cette communication-là, je pense que ça serait peut-être important d'ajouter cet élément-là à l'ordre du jour. L'ordre du jour, ce serait intéressant si c'était envoyé à l'avance, disons 1 heure à l'avance, parce que parfois, on finit par avoir des ordres du jour différents, n'est-ce pas? Alors, si l'ordre du jour a été envoyé à l'avance et que c'est cet ordre du jour-là qu'on révise au début de la rencontre, je pense qu'à ce moment-là, tout le monde serait sur la même page. Et pour les invités qui arrivent en ligne, ça pourrait être le huissier responsable du mode virtuel qui offre l'ordre du jour aux invités virtuels et vice-versa. Alors, si un invité arrive en personne, à ce moment-là, peut-être simplement demander à l'invité son courriel, on lui envoie l'ordre du jour électronique par courriel, tout le monde a un ordre du jour, tous les membres apportent leur propre ordre du jour. Alors, ça pourrait être certains changements de comportement qu'on pourrait demander à nos membres. Maintenant, des options pour l'inclusivité. Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire pour faire en sorte que les gens se sentent inclus quand on a une présentation audiovisuelle? Comme Frank mentionnait tantôt, c'est probablement pas une bonne idée d'avoir des flipcharts, d'avoir des tableaux blancs. Donc, utilisons les modes virtuels. Alors, on peut avoir un tableau blanc, on peut avoir un Jamboard, par exemple, en ligne, et tout le monde peut faire partie de ça. Et ce que je suggérerais pour donner suite à la suggestion de dessous pour que tout le monde ait une participation équitable. Si jamais on fait des petits groupes de discussion, pourquoi ne pas jumeler des gens en personne et des gens en ligne pour ces petites discussions, ces discussions en petits groupes? À ce moment-là, tout le monde a la même expérience. C'est une expérience semblable et c'est pas des gens à part, us versus them, comme Frank disait tantôt. What about votes? Votes are also another consideration for us. So some votes, they're fine. We can just raise our hands, whether we're in person or online. Some votes we can provide in the chat virtually. What about if we need to tally the two online and in the room? We need to think about that. Sarge that arms, another role, something to consider. And what about our secret votes, such as our club elections? So those are some special inclusiveness considerations that I thought probably worth thinking about. And what's most important in all this is engaging our members. What do they want? So I talked about awareness. Today we're having awareness. We will all need to bring these suggestions, options to our club members and ask them what they want, how they see the future for your club. That's really the crux, because every single member will want to have a say in this, for them especially to continue to become, to be Toastmasters and continue their learning with us. So with the change, that's change conversations, and that's not just one conversation, it's going to be several conversations. There will be training that will be required as well. So for the tech masters, for example, you don't want to have the same person as tech master all the time, because that person did not sign up to be a Toastmaster to be a tech master, right? So we will want to have a team rotate that role so that everybody can continue to pursue their learning as part of Toastmasters and pathways. So these are all considerations that we thought about, some options, and the most important thing will really be to engage each one of our members at a time. Back to you, Mr. Panel Chair.
Merci beaucoup, Angèle. Donc, on a eu plusieurs points. Je suis convaincu qu'il y a plusieurs questions parmi vous. So, just to help us manage the questions while I ask Julie and Linda if there's anything, I didn't really see anything in the chat, but maybe they did. Just use the raise hand function. And if you can't find it, just vigorously wave your hands and I'll see you and I'll ask you to ask your question. Seeing none right now, just to get the ball rolling. Frank, I do believe this may be an unfair question to provide an answer to, but as we accumulate some toys to set up our rooms to do the online aspect of this meeting, how long do you think before the meeting we need to get there to set all these things up?
I think, Sylvia, that would depend entirely on just how many toys you are using. If it is just the laptop, it will set up fairly quickly, assuming you know how to connect your laptop to the plug that's in the wall and connect to whatever the router is that's in the room. If you have decided to add a microphone and a speaker, it will depend, first of all, whether the speaker is wired or if it's wireless. There's any number of possibilities. But to be honest, if you keep it fairly simple, a microphone for the room, let's say you have two cameras, one of them is an iPhone, maybe, for example, or something like that. The laptop, the screen, and a projector, I would say that probably would not take more than 10 minutes at the most. In fact, as people get used to it, you probably could find yourself setting that up in about 5 minutes or so, making the connection to the internet, and then you're just ready to start the Zoom meeting whenever you want to kick it off.
Okay, thank you, Frank. And I guess it's fair to say that on our first try, we probably want to allow us a little more fudge factor and so on and so forth.
Yeah, like an hour.
At least. Good. Thank you very much, Frank. Excellent response. I knew you couldn't really pin down to a time, but just something to consider. Any questions from my lovely audience?
There are two for you in the chat, Sylvain.
Oui. Thierry demande comment gérer le breakout room en mode hybride. So how to manage the breakout rooms in a hybrid mode? That's an excellent question. Does anyone want to take it, or I can take a kick at it? Frank?
You're not going to sell that. Quite simply, that's what it is. You can't stuff people in the room inside the screen to go to an electronic breakout room. You're going to need to figure out some kind of an adaptation, or maybe somebody can take one of those portable devices and walk into the breakout room. There might be possibilities. It's the same as things like elections and that sort of thing. You're going to need to find your way around it. You can do things on an informal basis, on a formal, but again, always when you look at things, think about how does this look to the people online and how does it look to the people in the room? And I would highly recommend for the first several meetings, make a point at the end of each meeting or follow up with an email to everyone that was in the meeting and ask them specific questions about the experience so that they can tell you this didn't quite feel right, that didn't, and that's how you're going to learn to adapt.
Thank you, Frank. And while I'm not a panelist, I'll offer one option, possibly maybe to consider. One option could be, if your data permits as a member, some of the audience members can maybe log in on their phone and join the breakout that way. That's assuming your data allows it, but you can also probably just use the audio and just at least listen in. So again, we are about offering suggestions. One of the things I would like to do is possibly have a Q&A, and as you go out in the world and try these different things, whatever aspect of hybrid we're talking about, let's share collectively, because we're all going to be living this. While our experiences and our needs will all be different, I think we will only get better by sharing. Une autre question, Julie, tu m'as dit qu'il y en avait deux. If the club meets in a hybrid mode, how do they manage expectation about people changing their minds between meetings in person or virtual, traffic, time, weather, work? Anyone want to take that one? France, Julie, France, Julie. Angèle, Sue. France and Julie on my front of my screen.
I can take that, Sylvain.
Thank you, Angèle.
Thought I had, well, I mentioned about the agenda a little earlier on. So if it's indicated in the agenda, that's one thing that can already prepare probably for the majority. And true, as Devender points out, it's possible that, you know, some people at the last minute will not be able to, let's say, join in person, will need to join online. All good. I think as long as this person would then inform, let's say, the Toastmaster, or there should be a point person who, you know, who is aware or who receives that communication. I think a Toastmaster might be a good person, or the Sergeant at Arms, one of the two Sergeant at Arms, so that the connection gets made.
Merci, Angèle.
Sylvain, if I might offer on that as well, if your club has really managed to create that nice, healthy environment, it doesn't matter how people connect. You don't have to track it. If they come in online on one day and they come in physically the next day, it's going to work.
One thing to add to that, though, is remember at the moment with COVID restrictions, you may have some room restrictions, so your club may have to manage that as well. But that's not a hybrid question, but it is a logistical question that you may have to also deal. Sue, I saw your hand. Maybe you had something else to add?
No, I was thinking the same thing. You know that feeling when we haven't seen someone in a long time and they walk into our room and we go, Frank! Well, if we had heard that somebody was no longer going to be able to join us, but suddenly we saw them online, I think that would be really cool. But I was thinking the same thing, Sylvain. We've got to be conscious. We only have, with spacing, we only have so much room in person. We'd need to know if someone was going to show up.
And I saw more of a comment from Thierry. Merci Thierry for the comment, is have a chat master or a moderator to manage the online, so on and so forth. And when I forget, I think it was Frank mentioning it for the inclusiveness, chatting, as he mentioned, with one another. We also have the chats online that the in-person people will be missing. So it's a question, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it's a question of including that if there are sidebar conversations that everyone feels included. So that's going to be a club decision. J'ai vu une autre question. Que sera lors des prochains concours? Pensez-vous que ce sera hybride ou uniquement virtuel? Ça serait une question pour le trio basé sur la logistique. Je pourrais vous dire en tant que concurrent, j'adore en personne. Je pourrais pas, je pense pas qu'on puisse vraiment répondre à moins que Frank and Sue from a district perspective, or even Jim, you're very involved with the district. You have an answer, but I think we'll have to wait for that one.
Mais Sylvain, si je peux me permettre, je pense que la question a peut-être trait aussi au concours au niveau du club. Alors, qu'est-ce qu'on veut faire? Puis pour moi, c'était une autre des considérations là, que je n'ai pas eu la chance de présenter. Mais oui, les concours, on va avoir des concours cet automne. Alors, qu'est-ce qu'on va faire à ce moment-là? Est-ce que ça serait une occasion idéale, évidemment, pour tous se rencontrer en personne? Mais quand on habite très loin, c'est pas évident. Là, on le fera probablement pas. Donc, il va probablement falloir avoir un mode hybride pour les concours de discours au niveau du club, si on veut en faire au niveau du club.
Je pensais que Ghislaine, tu avais des questions. Je me rends compte que c'est le mot du jour. Oui, Sue.
I was thinking of Christine Levesque within our club. Wouldn't it be a shame to be able to say, would love to have you. We know you're a phenomenal evaluator. Sorry, the contest is only in person. I think the district has to take a look at what a contest is going to look like at a club. And I think it would be very cool to have hybrid. I think, why not? Why not try it and see?
And I think ultimately, Sue, if I may add to your portion of the meeting, ultimately it has to be fair and inclusive. So how can that be done? It could be hybrid. It could be, you know what, to keep it fair for everyone, will be online for everyone as we are right now. I don't think we're going to define the answer now, but inclusiveness of all members. If only at the club, I would suggest make it fair to all. Frank, did you want to add something to that?
I think clubs are going to figure that part out, actually. It will work. It's going to take a bit of thinking through, possibly a little bit of trial and error, et cetera. But I think it will work. Breakout rooms, and whether it's a separate room or physically or electronically, that'll work. The one area that will need specific conscious attention is the judges. They have to be very, very careful that they treat the two media equally, that it does not matter to their impression whether the person is online or in the room, because it's a very easy trap to fall into, I think, and that probably will be one of the more difficult facets for them to deal with.
Merci beaucoup, Frank. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions à nos panélistes ou des points qu'on n'a pas soulevés? Parce que c'est une question que je n'ai pas demandé en fait au début de la rencontre. Merci à tous d'être ici, mais peut-être vous êtes venus pour trouver une réponse à une question spécifique. Est-ce que vous en avez une qu'on n'a pas adressée que vous voudriez qu'on réponde? So if there's anything we did not address that you came here, but I really wanted to know about X, anyone? I'm convinced we did not cover everything.
Moi, j'en ai une, Sylvain.
Oui, Julie.
On a effleuré le sujet tout à l'heure. Si l'ordinateur du présentateur ou de l'orateur du jour plante, on fait quoi? Quels seraient, selon vous, les meilleurs plans de backup de combien de personnes doivent avoir accès à l'ordre du jour? Combien de personnes ont les sujets improvisés? Comment est-ce qu'on double ou triple au cas où la logistique nous lâche?
I have an answer, but I'm not the panelist. I'll take it. Who's pointing at me? Being a retired military, my motto is plan for the worst, hope for the best. And hope is not a co-op, but you need to think of all those scenarios. For example, not specific to your question, but what if the internet drops at the in-person meeting? Do we just cancel the meeting? Does that half continue on their own and the other half continue online? I'm not saying either one is good or bad, but you need to figure that out. So as you get more advanced, and there's two monitors or two laptops on place. We all have phones. If we can connect to the internet, assuming it's the internet that's still available, but the device that died. So we have to think of those scenarios. What's available to us? We're all going to live unique circumstances. No disaster is the same. Ask a firefighter or a soldier when he goes to battle. We have plans, but you need to be flexible because no fire, no battle is the same. So plan as many disasters as you can. To me, that's not being pessimistic. That's being prepared. Those who fail to plan to fail. So very excellent question, Julie. It will depend on what's available at hand at that place and adapt. I mean, how many of us have been at home, our computer crashed, we couldn't connect, we grabbed our phone and we did it on the phone. So it's those things. The only caution I put to that is data. If you're on your phone because the internet dropped you and you're in a meeting, you can share your data. How long can you do it? So those are considerations unique to that situation, to that club. Je vois le carton jaune. Je m'apprête à prendre une dernière question avant les mots de clôture. S'il y a d'autres questions dans le chat, oui, peut-être?
Oui, j'en aurais une.
Oui, Davinder.
Donc, c'est relié à ce que Angèle a dit lors de sa présentation. Avez-vous des idées de comment éviter que le club, surtout un club plus public, un club avancé, on est tous des Toastmasters engagés, mais un club régulier, je vois le danger qu'on se sépare en deux clans. Le clan qui se rencontre en personne, puis le clan qui est à distance. Donc, il y a comme deux niveaux de membership. Qu'en pensez-vous de ça pour des façons d'éviter ça?
Angèle, tu veux-tu le prendre?
Je peux faire un début de réponse, puis ensuite vous ajouterez. Merci de la question d'Avender. Ça me fait penser justement quand j'ai envoyé l'annonce de notre rencontre aujourd'hui aux membres de mon club, causeur. Une de nos nouvelles membres qui vient de se joindre à Toastmaster au mois de mars m'a dit « Oh, Angèle, si on a des rencontres hybrides, je ne pourrais pas continuer parce que j'habite à l'extérieur de la ville et ça prendrait trop de temps pour venir, donc je ne pourrais pas. » Puis finalement, j'avais défini, mais très rapidement. Alors, ça m'a simplement fait penser que, OK, il y a des gens, surtout nos nouveaux, qui se sont joints durant la dernière année, ils n'ont jamais connu l'expérience en mode présentiel. Ils ne la connaissent pas, cette expérience-là, du tout. Alors, mais c'est cette expérience-là qu'ils veulent et c'est cette expérience-là qu'ils ont achetée. Alors, je pense que pour eux, ça va valoir la peine de poursuivre la situation en mode virtuel et présentiel pour qu'ils soient capables. Si jamais ils essayent en mode présentiel puis ça leur convient, bien, pourquoi pas? Mais je sais qu'il va y avoir des contraintes de temps pour certaines personnes s'il y a plus de, comme Sue mentionnait tantôt, là, quand il y a plus de déplacements, c'est certain qu'on n'aime pas tellement un déplacement. Moi-même, je peux dire que j'ai été gâtée la dernière année en n'ayant pas ces déplacements. Puis je me dis, bien, peut-être même Avancé Synergie, je vais peut-être faire moitié-moitié. Peut-être une rencontre en personne par mois, puis une rencontre en ligne, en fait. Voilà. Je pense qu'il va falloir garder la notion, ne serait-ce que pour nos nouveaux membres.
Merci beaucoup, Angèle.
Merci.
Incredibly, thank you, Davinder, for that question. Thank you for all your questions, one and all, and thank you for being here. I was seeing the yellow becoming really dark, and now it's regrettably turned to red. So, to sum up, a lot of this to go into hybrid mode truly is a change management. It really is. Are our members ready for it? As Sue alluded to it, when we started just online, there were hiccups, there were bumps on the road, and look at it now. We're making it work. It's adaptation. If you start with the low-tech solution, as Frank alluded to, and please do not go spend thousands of dollars until you figure out that this works for you. Figure it out with the low-tech. Just remember it will affect your user experience, but we are social creatures. And to answer part of your question, Davinder, and to our members, as you go forward with the hybrid mode, it's about inclusion. It's about connecting with our fellow members. N'hésitez pas, que ce soit via Zoom ou un téléphone, même ceux qui ont des cordes, parlez de vive voix à vos membres. Connectez, apprenez à les connaître. Le système de mentorat est un super bon moyen de connecter avec nos gens et de les aider. Members who aren't comfortable with technology, we lived it with Pathways. A lot of our senior members weren't comfortable. It's connecting. It's through the relationships that this will work. Hybrid will work if we're willing. Is it for all your clubs? It depends. Your state, your status, your members' desire will decide. But I encourage you to try it because I think it's just another ace in our pocket to make Toastmasters and leadership and communication a worldwide reality. To you, Linda.